Good morning. For this assignment, you will be applying the properties of inverse functions. So I will be working through this one, finding the inverse function for this g of x. But just to go through the assignment, first you'll be applying your knowledge of inverse functions to this situation here and answering some questions. Here you're going to read a graph to find a solution, whether it's a regular function or the inverse function. Again, remember, inverse function means output and input are switched. So for example, f inverse of 6, 6 is the output of f. So what is the input when the output is 6? Here, you're just checking to see if these are inverses. We'll go over how to do that. Here, you're just finding the inverse. You should also check if it's correct. Here's just some cube root or cube equations. So since they're inverse operations or inverse functions, you would have to apply the other one. All right, so let's take this function. G of x equals cube root of 5x minus 7. So to find if they are, to find the inverse, first we're going to find the inverse, then check if it's correct. Remember that we switch x and y, input and output. That's the same thing, switch input and output for any of these functions. So we have y equals cube root of 5x minus 7, right? Okay, so we switch x and y, then we solve for y. So x goes here, and then y goes here, 5y minus 7. Okay, so to get to y, first we have to cube both sides, right, to cancel out the cube root. So we have x cubed equals 5y minus 7. We add 7 to both sides, so we get x cubed plus 7 equals 5y. Then we divide by 5. Right? Y equals x cubed plus 7 for 5. So the inverse function will be g inverse of x. And this is the inverse function. However, we can distribute that over 5. So it's x cubed over 5 plus 7 over 5. So these are the same thing, but you could write it either way. So to check, we either do g of g inverse of x or g inverse of g of x. Either way, you should get the same answer. So let's do our check here. Again, if we compose the function with its inverse, we should get x, because x is the input. Okay, so let's see. That means that I'm finding g of x cubed over 5 plus 7 over 5. Okay, so I'm just going to plug this in. I'm going to write out g of x, but instead of x, I'm going to put the inverse function, right? This is how we compose functions. Minus 7, and that's under the square root. So first I'm going to distribute the 5. I have cube root of, let's see, distribute the 5. I get x cubed plus 7 minus 7. 7 minus 7, of course, cancels out as 0, because these are inverse operations. Notice whenever we do anything, it will be an inverse operation. For example, 5 times 5 divided by 5 plus 7 minus 7. And then we have cube root and cube. Those are also inverse operations. So we get x, and this is the inverse function because it checks out. All right? So again, the main idea here is these two functions have their input and output switched. So so if you made a table of these two functions, you'd see that they're like mirror images, just the input and outputs are switched, the two columns. All right, very good. So just do your best on assignment. Ask if you have any questions, and I will talk to you next time. Okay, have a good day.